Life Audio.
Coming up on the Encouragement for You podcast, Christian psychiatrist Dr. Frank Minirth provides answers for worry. And Tony Dyer discusses the question, are you a distraught person?
Welcome to the Encouragement for You podcast, brought to you by Encouragement Communications in association with the Salem Web Network and is part of the Life Audio Faith Toolkit series. For more inspirational, faith-affirming podcasts, visit lifeaudio.com. In just a moment, your host, Don Hawkins, will introduce today's episode. First,
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Let me tell you the God's gonna cut you.
It's Holy Week in Jerusalem. Crowds welcome Jesus as king. Rebellion is in the air.
Jesus operates outside our jurisdiction.
Rome will descend on us all.
But instead of taking the throne, Jesus turns the tables.
My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of thieves.
The world will never be the same. Now in theaters, The Chosen, Last Supper. Get your tickets now.
a word from our sponsors.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Let me tell you the God's gonna cut you.
It's Holy Week in Jerusalem, and the city is restless. The people of Israel welcome Jesus as king, his followers ready for revolution. But instead of taking the throne, Jesus turns the tables.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees! How will you escape being condemned to hell?
Experience Holy Week like never before.
What have you done?
Now in theaters, The Chosen, Last Supper. Get your tickets now.
In our first segment, Dr. Minirth joins host Don Hawkins to talk about how to deal with worry.
Is worry healthy or is it unhealthy?
Well, Don, worry is a spectrum. Everyone worries, but for some of you, it's a realistic concern. And we're going to look at that from about 3 or 4 angles here. No matter how you look at it, Don, a realistic concern is healthy. And we're going to look at it theologically. We're going to look at it in surgery. We're going to look at it in work. We're going to look at it biochemically. However, if it goes beyond that, where it's fretting, then, Don, that moves into unhealthy. So let's cover it in all 3 areas. We'll cover it theologically, we'll cover it psychologically, we'll cover it physiologically.
Yeah.
Let's look at it theologically.
Okay.
Don, the term, as you know, where we use worry or anxiety, is used about 25 times in the New Testament.
Yeah.
About 20 of those times it's used in a negative sense. We shouldn't fret, be anxious for nothing. That's the context that we don't want to do. However, about 5 times it's used in a positive concept, meaning a realistic concern. So we should look at issues and figure out what we can do, but that just sitting and spinning, that fretting, then that's not healthy.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right when you talk about those 5 instances where the term is used in a sense of caring. For example, Paul said of Timothy in Philippians 2 that he genuinely cared for the people that he pastored. He was a pastor of a church. And yet at the same time in Philippians 4, Paul says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, the passage we mentioned earlier. So clearly the same word used can be used in a positive way, and then just a couple of chapters later, used in a negative way. So what does surgery tell us about worry?
people going into surgery that have, you can divide them into three groups. One that say, hey, I could care less, I'm not worried at all, and they don't seem to be. And then the second are the group that have a realistic concern. And then the third are just sitting there spinning and worry. Which group does best? Which group does worst?
And I think the answer would be those who worry about it.
The ones that have intense worry and fretting they do not do as well. The ones that have a realistic concern do the best. So just another interesting way. Another way to look at it is work. Do those that have a realistic concern perform better at work? And how do they compare with those that are fretting? How do they compare with those that have no concern at all? The ones that do the best workers are ones that have a realistic concern. Those are just sitting there spinning and worry. They do not do as well. They do worse. And the ones that have no care at all, then they don't do as well as those who have a realistic concern.
In fact, some of them lose their jobs.
That's it.
And these days, a lot of people can be very worried about losing their jobs. And yet again, that balanced, realistic concern that motivates us to do a good job, that prompts us to do well, very, very important. The first principle, Frank, help us understand where we need to start.
Number one is decipher the odds. Don, perhaps 95% of things we worry about never come true. And the catastrophe we so much fear, most of those never come true. And many times what does happen, it comes from out of the blue, and we never had any idea it was coming.
Yeah.
Thus, worry is absolutely useless.
And Jesus pointed that out in Matthew chapter 6 when he talked about your heavenly Father knows if there are two birds in the air, two sparrows, and one of them falls to the ground, and how much more does he care for us? That brings us to the second of these 7 ways to overcome worry, Frank, and that is to live one day at a time. Again, that was what Jesus said in Matthew 6:34. Don't worry about tomorrow. Obsessive worriers literally live in the future. You mentioned depressive worriers. They typically live in the past. The future hasn't arrived yet, and the past is already gone. We need to live in the present. Frank, you remember Jim Elliot, one of the 5 martyrs back in 1956?
Oh, I do.
One of the great statements he made is, wherever you are, be all there. Live to the hilt each day what you believe to be the will of God. Live one day at a time.
Number 3, get the facts. Worries often fade with facts. Get more facts concerning a worry. Perhaps you're maximizing. You've overestimated the degree of the worry. Perhaps you've missed the big picture. Facts will often decrease the worry.
Yeah, so important to gain those insights. Number 4 is share with a friend. There's an old aphorism that says a burden shared is only half a burden. That ties right into Ecclesiastes 4, which says 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. If the one fall, the other will help him up. Build a few good friendships and share often. Frank, over the years, you and I have talked to each other, called each other, visited with each other over coffee on many occasions and have been mutually encouraged.
Don, number 5 is use the time limit technique. Don, I remember well when I was in medical school, and I was a fair worrier in those days, and I was enjoying memorizing 4-6, and that was really helping. And I discovered this little technique. Medical school was tough. I mean, I would study all day, almost all night. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so one day I said to myself, Minirth, if you don't quit this worry, then you're going to have something to really worry about. I mean, I'd worry about little things all the time. I said, then you're going to have something to worry about. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'll worry next summer. And anytime, I had all these classes, so anytime I'd start that worry, I couldn't pay attention. I said, I'll stop it. You can worry next summer.
Yeah.
And, of course, by the time next summer got there, the worries were gone.
Oh, that's great.
It's a little technique I developed and used for therapy in people for years and years, still do. I encourage them to set aside 10 minutes a day for their worry time, and a better term is for their consideration time.
Yeah.
List, list what you're worried about, list what you can do about it, but set a time limit on that. We've only got so much mental energy.
Right.
And if you sit there and spin, you'll use all your mental energy. You'll get depressed. You'll be worried. You'll worry more. And if you'll limit it, aside 10 minutes a day, and you say, oh, that's never enough time. We'll assign 10 minutes twice a day. But don't spend hours and hours just looping and going nowhere.
And, Frank, it liberates people if they set that limit. And I've used that technique that I borrowed from you on numerous occasions with folks, and sometimes even encourage them, set your alarm. You have an alarm on your watch, or you have an alarm clock at home. Set that 10-minute clock, and when the alarm goes off, it's time to quit worrying and move on. And that brings us to number 6, and that is to accept the possible in a worry. Now, accept the possible if the worry just doesn't abate, and then there's time to take action. Prepare for the worst and improve on it. Often the worst will not happen, but this technique may offer a real measure of freedom from worry. Do a little worst-case scenario game planning, and then look at how God may work things out so that things turn out better than you might anticipate.
Yeah, when you accept the worst, sometimes that can help. I remember an old story, Don, of a man that the doctor told him he was going to die, and so he had terrible stomach, and he was bleeding and all kinds of stuff, and he said, well, since I'm going to die, I'm going to take a vacation, and because it's all over anyway. I'm going to do some things I always wanted to do. I always wanted to go on a cruise. I'm going to do that. So he did, and he started getting well. Many times it's best to accept the worst, and sometimes the worst won't come.
A lot of benefit in that. And, Frank, that brings us to number 7, which is?
Form a plan of action. Anytime I have a concern, I list good options, I list bad options, I list crazy options, and maybe list 100 of them. There's hundreds of solutions to any problem. Sometimes they're a little crazy, but list them, be creative.
We'll be back with more after a brief word from our sponsors. And don't forget to listen for Don's live weekend talk show, Encouragement Live, heard Saturdays at 7:05 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio and other radio stations around the country, as well as on the worshipchannel.org.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.
Let me tell you, the God's gonna cut you.
It's Holy Week in Jerusalem, and the city is restless. The people of Israel welcome Jesus as king, his followers ready for revolution. But instead of taking the throne, Jesus turns the tables.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees! How will you escape being condemned to hell?
Experience Holy Week like never before.
What have you done?
Now in theaters, The Chosen, Last Supper. Get your tickets now.
Dr. Tony Dyer spent decades in Christian ministry to young people and adults and wrote a major curriculum for young people. In our next segment, he and host Don Hawkins address the question, are you a distraught person?
Talk to us, Tony, about what is a distraught person. What does that look like in a person's life?
I think distraught means overwhelmed. It can mean distracted. It can mean harassed. Again, Webster defines one of those parts of that word as being driven mad. I believe it's the feeling that comes over the Christian and even the non-Christian of this sense of I can't handle anything else. I can't do anything else. I can't take care of one more problem. And so we become distraught. We become distracted. We become distressed. And yet, of course, Christ, and we'll talk about that, gives us an answer for that. And then we mentioned this first habit was the habit that we get into of denying that we have any problems, because some way or another, Don, that makes us feel that we're not spiritual. You know, I have to put on this facade that everything's okay. I like to tease about it, and I know you've seen this through the years. You go to church and stick out your hand, and someone asks you how you are and you smile and say, "Oh, great," when you just had the biggest fight in the world on your way to church with the kids in the car and everything else.
Husbands, wives, children, everybody's on the outs, but hey, we paste on that smile, walk through the door, and we're really, we don't like the H word, hypocrite, but that's right where we are. What we're talking about, friends, is that denial that says all is well when we know deep down inside nothing is really well.
And there's nothing wrong with coming to the Father or going to a pastor or going to a friend or a therapist or a counselor and saying, I need some help. Boy, this thing that I'm dealing with, maybe you need to go to a financial counselor. Maybe you're having some challenges in your relationship, in your marriage, or with your children. There's nothing wrong with going and saying, I need some help, instead of denying it. And Satan wants us to deny it, Don. Satan wants us to believe in our hearts everything's okay. We don't need help. We don't need God's help. I can handle this on my own.
Yeah.
And the truth is, that's not how we were made.
And Tony, Satan's motivation and Christ's motivation are so different, and Jesus articulated both of those in John 10, verse 10. He said, the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. That's Satan's agenda. He wants to wipe your life out. He wants you to be distraught, and he wants to use those feelings of being distraught to push you over the edge, to convince you that you don't need to get help and get you into denial. But Jesus said, I'm come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And if you do not experience and are not experiencing that kind of life, the Lord wants you to have that.
Both of us have spoken with people through the years and counseled people, and when they first come to us or we first begin to speak with them, they're saying, "Oh, nothing's really wrong. I didn't really think I should come to you anyway." But then all of a sudden, when the walls break down, when they begin to say to you what really is wrong, you can just see this relief come across their face and sense in their spirit that, well, they are so glad that they came, and so they break that habit of denial. They break that habit of not admitting that they need some help, and what a joy it is to see that, and there's nothing wrong with that, as we said.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask for help. It's just okay.
Yeah, it is, and that's what we're trying to communicate to you tonight, friend. It is all right to not be totally with it, to have everything under control. And for some of you, the pain, the pretending has been there, and you've tried to pretend that the pain is not there, but it is there, and help and hope is available. The attitude of denial is the first habit of a highly effectively distraught person. Tony, what is the second habit?
Well, I think the second habit, and by the way, we mentioned this briefly, I think every one of these can be deadly to the Christian.
Oh, yeah.
If not physically, certainly spiritually or emotionally, financially, I think, and again, you mentioned that a while ago, Don, it is, I think it is Satan's purpose to try to destroy us as Christians and even as non-Christians. But the second one would be what I call we begin to make excuses and we begin to blame. I think that's a really big one. When my wife and I have a friendly, heated discussion, after 36 years of marriage, it's a whole lot easier for me to blame her than it is for me to assume my part in whatever the problem may be.
Yeah, or maybe her parents, or maybe circumstances that affect her. Yeah, it's always somebody else's fault. And as you say, Tony, this is a habit we get into. And rather than taking responsibility, as David did when he sinned with Bathsheba, and when Nathan confronted him and said, "You are the man," he said, "You're absolutely right. I'm guilty as charged." And for us, the reality is shifting that blame, trying to blame someone else or some other circumstance, is a great habit that'll drive us to further feelings of being distraught.
And the great thing that David did in the 51st Psalm, you'll remember, when he finally quit denying what he had done to Bathsheba and to Uriah and that whole story, and he said in that 51st Psalm, he said, "Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness." That's when he came clean. And so he quit blaming all the people around him, even though he was king. and could have anyone killed, could do anything he wanted to do. But it is that moment, I believe, in that 51st Psalm when he finally broke through to God. And then, of course, he later on says or sings praises to God, I think in stanza 13, when he says, "Teach me thy ways, O Lord, and restore unto me the joy of thy salvation." So I think a second habit, Don, that is so easy to get into is we blame the preacher. The preacher steps on our toes on Sunday morning, and I remember growing up in church, and we used to have a fried preacher when we'd come home.
Chicken fried preacher on Sunday morning. Yep, you got that right.
He stepped on my toes. He got really too close to home. So if we're not careful, we'll get into this deadly habit of instead of assuming the responsibility for our own mistakes, for our own stuff that we get ourselves into, then we will start blaming others. And yet there's such freedom in just simply coming. 1 John 1:9, a great verse that all Christians know. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and to just wipe away our sins. And that's all God wants.
Yeah.
So he just wants us to come clean and say, Lord, it's not Don's fault that I'm this way. It's not my wife's fault that I'm having this problem. It's not my boss's fault that I got mad today. It's because I got tired and he caught me sleeping, or he caught me, loafing on the job, and he just called me on it. It's not anyone. It's my responsibility. And so just as we come clean with Christ, then we come clean with each other. And I think that negates that habit where we don't blame. And it's so freeing to start accepting our own stuff. And, of course, a great word for that we all use in counseling and a buzzword today is that we take more ownership that way, too.
What is the third habit of highly effectively distraught people?
The third one is perhaps one of the most significant ones, although they're all significant, and that is how we really hurt the people that we love in this. We can become so wrapped up in ourselves, and again, the blame game, and not assuming responsibility that when we are confronted, when someone does lovingly talk to us about what some of our issues may be, or just coming to us and say, boy, are you okay? Sometimes that can promote a response like, yeah, I'm fine, leave me alone. When deep inside we're really not. And often we hurt those people that are really trying to help us the most, trying to, the ones that love us the most. And, of course, that old saying, we hurt the ones that we love.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Encouragement for You with Don Hawkins, host of Encouragement Live Radio and author of over 25 books, including Never Give Up and Master Discipleship Today. You can find more about Don and his books at encouragementlive.org. Encouragement for You is a production of Encouragement Communications with the Salem Web Network and lifeaudio.com. Editing by Phil Giebers, production by Elizabeth Andrade. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we'd love for you to head over to your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. It really does help people find us.
Let me take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on Encouragement for You. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Stay encouraged and join us next time for Encouragement for You.
For some of us, personal finances aren't just personal. They include loved ones, neighbors, the communities we call home, and the causes we hold in our hearts. At Thrivent, planning your finances is bigger than just money. We help you put your plans into motion and faith into action so you can do more for the ones in your heart. Because sometimes all you need to make a difference is someone to help you make it happen. Thrivent, where money means more. Connect with us at Thrivent.com.